follow-up of the different concession holders. And also, I'm in charge of the development of the industry's activities in the port of Kribi.
Okay, thank you very much. On the other hand, we have also a prominent speaker, Amaury de Feligot. Please introduce yourself in less than 1 minute, if possible.
Thank you, David, and good morning to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here in front of you. So my name is Amaury de Feligot. After being for 7 years for the French donor, the Agence Française de Développement, working a lot in infrastructure projects in Africa, I worked for McKinsey in the Casablanca office, again on mining and infrastructure projects, logistics projects, and now for the last 14 years, I've co-created and developed Okan Partners, which is a financial advisory and consulting firm dedicated to Africa, based in Paris. And with Okan Partners, we work for many of the main actors of the logistics, ports, and trading sector in Africa. So we have been working for Marsa Maroc, we have been working for AGL, MSC, Necotrans, for many states in Africa, Mauritania, Côte d'Ivoire, and elsewhere to develop the logistics and ports environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. It's an impressive. Let me cloak here. Thank you very much indeed, Amaury. Now we will start the discussion. The discussion will be dealing with the maritime trade routes between Africa and Europe, between Africa and Spain. And this is something that, of course, both of you are very familiar with, and that I'm sure you will share very inspiring and rich information about this topic. Let's start with Michael. Michael, what do you think is the current situation of the trade routes between Europe and Cameroon in your specific experience, and Africa as a whole?
I think that we can continue to improve the trade routes between Africa and Europe. Currently, we can observe that the main market of Cameroon and Africa in general is between Africa and Asia. So currently, the first providers, the first clients of African countries is China and Vietnam, if we see all the different statistics we have now. So it's really important to continue to improve the partnership between the different companies from Europe and Africa to consolidate all the different aspects we already have. If I can give some example, if we can have a focus between Spain and Cameroon, for example, you have to know that in 2023, Spain was the fourth largest customers of Cameroon. If we see the importation with around 8,000 TEUs per year. But currently, we can see that in the export, we have some difficulty to continue to develop this route. So it's really important to improve themselves, such as we can have different maritime routes provided by different companies, sea companies like CMA CGM or example, Hapag-Lloyd.
Do you believe the lack of existing routes is undermining this trade promotion between both regions?
Sorry, can you repeat?
I mean, do you think the lack of having enough routes between Africa and Europe is undermining the development of trade between Africa and Europe?
Yes, I think that this is a problem that we have. We have to develop the routes, but if you want to develop the route, it is necessary to develop the trades. For example, if we don't have different companies from Europe in Africa, we can't develop the trade between the countries. So it's really important that the government looks for partnership between the two parts of this world, the two regions. This is a first obligation that we have. And after that, it's also important to it's also important to develop the processing of the goods in our country and to our different markets in Europe. Also, it's important to know that the different non-barriers, the different rules that the European Union make difficult the trade between Africa and Europe, because we have to improve our norms, we have to improve our regulations to be sure that we can attempt the different objectives that the European companies have.
Yeah, Amaury, you that you are also familiar with this sector for many years, what is your opinion regarding the current situation of trade between Africa and Europe?
I think the situation between Africa and Europe is very interesting, but another question which is of great interest, and I think Michael has spoken about it, is the trade between Africa and the rest of Africa. So the trade, the intra-African trade.
Intra-African trade.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. And that's something that needs to be pushed, but that cannot be pushed if there is no industrialization of the continent. So that's one point. And we see that in many countries, in Ethiopia, in Morocco, in Benin, in Togo, in Gabon, in Nigeria, and in many other countries, there are these special economic zones which are developing in order to transform and to add some value to the raw products, in order for these products not to be exported in this raw version, but to be transformed and to create jobs and to be able for Africa to trade with itself. So that's an important point. The other point between you spoke about the trade between Europe and Africa, but as Mr. Mama told once again, the trade is more and more between China and Africa, because China is becoming one of the main partners of Africa because of the products, the cheap products, but also the quality products that they are producing for the continent as they produce for Europe and the States. And also the role of China as a big importer of raw materials, minerals, agri products that China imports from Africa. So that's a trading partner which is more and more important for Africa. Then the third point I would like to speak about are the hubs. There are these very big hubs which are now the pivots for the maritime routes, lines. One of them, for instance, has appeared almost from nowhere in Morocco. It's Tangemed. I think 20 years ago, Tangemed was barely on the map, and now that's the main hub in Africa. Not only for Africa, but also for Europe, just in front of Algeciras in Spain. And for the first year, last year, Tangemed was in the top 20 of the ports in the world. Never had any port be ranked in the top 20 before. So I think that's something which is quite new and which is very important.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that this has been a game changer, no, for trade around the world, the Tangermed, and now they are building Tangermed. They built Tangermed 1, Tangermed 2, and then now they are building Tangermed 3. So it will be getting even bigger. And this was definitely a strategic project for Morocco. Worldwide, and now this positioning, as you said, Morocco in the map, the global map, in the trade routes, and even more right now with the problem with the problems that we're facing in the Red Sea, that many routes are turning by South Africa to reach Europe instead. So they are using also Tangermed port in these new routes. So it's facilitating the access to these markets. But do you think that we need to increase the investment in new ports also in Africa in order to be able to increase this trade, or are we okay with the investment that we have so far?
So, Mr. Michael, I'll let you answer the questions, and then I'll come after you if you want.
Okay, thank you, Amori. Yeah, we have to, if we want to develop the trade, it's necessary to have investment on the infrastructures. It's necessary to expand or modernize the port facilities to increase the capacity for the vessels and the cargo, and improve the productivity of the ports. It's also necessary to develop specializing terminals to meet the strategic needs of our
I think we are cutting off a little bit.
It looks like Cameroon has been cut.
Blackout.
Yeah. So maybe I can...
economy in Africa and
no, wait.
improve the accessibility and the connectivity.
Sorry, Michael, because there was a little cut off. You can proceed now, please. Something happened with the network.
So
please go ahead.
As I said, so I think that we have to improve the investment on infrastructure. So it's necessary to expand, and or modernize the port facility to increase capacity for the vessels and cargo, and improve the productivity of the different terminal. We also have to developing specialized terminal to meet the strategic needs of our economies in Africa. I think also we have to improve the accessibility and the connectivity of the different platforms through the development of the multimodality within ports area, promote the sustainable economy by integrating sustainable environmental practice into the development projects, and such as the clean energy, for example, and the preservation of the biodiversity. And finally, and I think this is the point, take advantage of the public-private partnership to mobilize financial resources and implement projects more effectively and efficiently. This is the main point, I think, if we want to develop trade. But you have also to know that if we want to develop the trade, it's necessary to promote joint investment in the territories. So we have to collaborate. We have to collaborate with the different European companies and the African companies to see how to do, especially in terms of processing raw materials, as Amori said before. So we also need to enable African economies to converge towards the new rules and standards of the European Union, and set up privileged corridor between economic territories by facilitating cost and logistic delays. And we can do that if the different port authorities from Africa and Europe can collaborate together to fix some tariff and negotiate with the different sea companies to know how to provide good services.
Mm-hmm. And Amori, what is your take on this, on the investment needs for the development of the ports in Africa to improve their trade?
So my first answer would be that Africa, what do you mean about Africa? 54 countries, it's complicated to give an answer. If you take, once again, Egypt and Morocco, and also maybe a bit less, but also Southern Africa, you have countries that have invested very heavily, willing to be, for Egypt, for instance, at the end of the Red Sea, one of the main hubs for all the traffic of Eastern Mediterranean coming from Asia and going to Asia. You have Morocco, we have spoken about it. You have Southern Africa, which has recently given a concession on the container terminal of Durban to ICTSI. So you have these countries which are quite in advance. And then you have the kind of second-rank countries. You have Port of Kribi, where the Cameroonian government has investing very heavily. You have Nigeria, which in itself is a kind of subcontinent. It's so huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And where the port of Lagos is totally, well, it's not that it's not working, but it's complex because it's taken inside of the city. So they are opening now a new port, a new port in Lekki. So when you speak about Africa, you speak about the countries which are very different, countries which are also in the hinterland. They don't have access to the sea, so they need to develop these famous multimodal corridors between these countries like Niger, like Ethiopia, like Uganda, to the sea through railways, highways, for some of them through rivers like DRC, which is a huge country, which on the west has only a very small piece
Access
of
to
land linking the big capital, Kinshasa. It's 20 million inhabitants to the sea. So you have all these problems of corridors that need also to be tackled. So it's huge. So yes, there is a big need for capex, for investment in the infrastructure, in the superstructure. There is a need to develop also concession, PPPs, but there is also something that needs to be taken care of. It's all the operational, all the soft investment. You know, sometimes you can really unlock the logistics by just putting some software, some small capex. Sometimes the huge capex, they are really not needed, and you can unlock a lot of things just with better processes, organizing the ecosystem so as for them to discuss with each other with a good software. So that's very important, because the white elephant is something you need to avoid in Africa as elsewhere.
Michael, you work in a port. How do you find that are established the players of the international trade around African ports? That is to say, do you have access to enough facilities, enough operators, enough handling companies? So are you able to perform your daily task accordingly? What would you have? And you will need more operators to come to the game.
I think that the problem is not I think the problem is not the number of operators. Currently, we can say that we have operators with great experiences in Cameroon, in Kribi Port. For example, currently, the multipurpose terminal is operated by ICTSI, for example, and the container terminal is operated by a consortium of Africa Global Logistics, CGM, and China Harbour Engineering Company. So I think that we have the skills to provide the different services for the handling of the goods. Also in the territory, we have great logistic providers, like I said before, Cameroonian providers, but also international providers like DHL, like Africa Global Logistics, like Seva, all the greatest that we can find in Africa. So it's not really the problem. The main problem, I think, is the connectivity. The connectivity that we have to improve to be sure that we can we can allow an efficient distribution of the goods to the hinterland and beyond. This is the main point we have to continue to develop, because as you know, in the context we live now, port plays a crucial role as central pivot in the global supply chain through their connectivities. We have to be the gateway for the maritime trade, and also we have to serve as an interface for the consolidation, the transshipment, and the transfers of the goods to and from various regions of the world. So it's really important to complete the multimodality of the port in Africa. Amuri spoke about different projects we have in Africa. In Nigeria, we have Lekki, for example, which is the answer that the Nigerian government gave to the economy cause of the congestion we can have in the port of Lagos. But currently, Lekki still have problem of connectivities. Lekki last year is around 150,000 TEUs cause they have some problem to deliver the goods from Lekki to the hinterland of Nigeria. Currently, they still have just one road. The problem is that we have to operate barges between Lekki and Apapa or Lagos ports to provide the goods. So it's not efficient.
Yeah.
It's really not efficient. So if we want that Majorpol become regional or global logistic hubs and attract relative value-added business, it's important to develop storage solutions, processing and distribution for the goods. And therefore, we have to contribute to the reduction of the cost and the delay associated with maritime transport, in maritime sea companies. So it's really important to continue to provide this kind of services and invest in the different infrastructures and the software. I can also say, with your permissions, that we still have to develop different best practices and to continue to promote efficient logistics with innovative technologies, systems to optimize the custom clearance of the good. For example, we have to use technologies and systems like single window, for example, to be sure that the different operator can operate easily and faster all the different process they have to do.
Yeah. Well, Amaury, by the way, what are you and your company doing in order to promote this investment and to face these challenges that we are seeing in Africa?
So that's very clear. You know, we are a strategic and financial advisor. So we work for many of these actors. So they can be investment funds like Maritime, like STOA, like AP Moller Capital. We work for companies like AGL, MSC. We work for Moroccan actors also. And what we do is two things. First, we do M&A activities. So we make sure that some of these groups can acquire companies in order to grow by acquiring new companies. So that's one of the things we do. And the other thing, which is the core of what we do, is we help these actors to develop new projects, make sure that these projects are bankable. So we do all the BPs, all the documentation, all the market studies to make sure that these new projects are bankable, and then we make sure that they are financed in debt and equity. So that's something we have done in Côte d'Ivoire on the San Pedro new terminal. We have done that in Gabon on the multi-purpose terminal and on the mineral for the manganese traffic. We have done that also in Morocco. We have done that in Madagascar. We have done that in Congo. So we are quite active. We have also been working in the country of Mr. Michael because we were the financial advisor on the multi-purpose terminal of Kribi a few years back. So we have been working on many new terminals in Africa.
And after being working in so many terminals and having such a wide experience, which things do you think are being done accurately, and what things are still to be done in order to improve this situation?
So, you know, the first point is that you need to invest wisely. So once again, avoid these white elephants, because it's very easy to put a lot of capex in a new port, but you need to have the traffic to make sure that these investments will have a return. That's important for the private sector, but that's also important for the governments, because most of the time the infrastructure itself is financed by the state, and the state needs to reimburse the debt which has been taken to finance this infrastructure, debts with the DFIs, the international donors, banks, etc. So first, avoid white elephants. Second, make sure that you invest also on the efficiency of the process, that all the ecosystem is working together in order for the containers or for all the traffic to go in and out of the port as fast as possible in order for these ports not to be clogged. Invest also in the hinterland, because in many countries like Dakar, like Tanger before Tanger Med, like Douala, many like Mombasa in Kenya, the port has historically been in the middle of the city. So it's a big problem today to go in and out of the port because you have to cross the city. Hence, the development of new ports outside of the cities. So you have many things that you need to do in order for the ports and the logistics and the maritime sector to move ahead in Africa. But and I will stop there. The reality is that in the last 10 to 20 years, you have major investments which have been done in the port sector with new hubs like Port Said, Tanger Med, Djibouti, Newport, Kribi, etc., which have been developed. So that's quite amazing.
Yeah, and how do you find, Michael, the support of the port authorities, for instance, in your case, in the development of this logistic, or in order to overcome these logistical challenges of connectivity that you were mentioning before?
To manage that, we decide to collaborate with the government. First of all, it's really important to know that, as Amaury said, we had a problem in Cameroon in particular. When the government decided to invest in the port of Kribi, we have some delay in the development of the connectivities. So the highway, the railway, from the hinterland to the port of Kribi. So we had the risk that Kribi will be a white elephant, like other project. But we decide to manage the thing differently. First of all, I think that the main thing we decide to do is to work with the private companies, like the sea companies or the logistic providers. We have developed a commercial dynamic with the shipping lines and the logistic operator to facilitate the management of international operation through the port of Kribi. This was the first point we decided to do, to be sure that we can manage different volumes and provide different services to the goods and to the international trade. After that, we begin the development of the integrated logistic and industrial zone to allow the processing of the raw material. Currently, I can say that we can process cocoa, for example. Cocoa, we can process vehicle, some kind of vehicle for the land work, for example. We can process cement, and we continue to develop this aspect. This one permits us to develop a captive traffic for Kribi Port. And the logistic area permits us to consolidate the flow of the goods that we can have from the inside of the territory, because you have to know, in Cameroon, if we see all the region, so Cameroon, Chad, Central Africa Republic, and north of Congo, 80% of the economy, so the traffic, is product and process around the zone of Douala, which is the historical port of Cameroon. So without connectivities, it was really important for us to develop other services and other activities around Kribi. And now we collaborate with the government to improve the connectivities of the territory, the terrestrial connectivities, by the construction of the road. The first phase is over. We already have an highway between the port and the entrance of Kribi. The highway between Yaoundé, which is the capital of Cameroon, and Douala is still under construction, but and we are waiting for the third phase of the highway between Kribi and Edea. Edea is the how to say that is the point of convergence between the highway of Yaoundé and Douala and the highway of Kribi and Douala. So it can be a good, I don't know how to say that in English, carrefour for the economy
crossroads.
of
A crossroad.
Crossroad, thank you. A crossroad of the economy of Cameroon. After that, we continue also to develop the project for the railway between Kribi and the north of the country. Is the main important, I think, is the main important development we have to do if we want to consolidate the flow between Cameroon and Chad and Central Africa Republic. So is will be really interesting. And finally, I think that the digitalizations will help Kribi to facilitate the trade and the use of Kribi for the different operators. So we decide to speed up the border crossing and reduce the operational time with the using of this innovative solution that we have. And also, we establish a collaborative framework between the government administration and the private providers to harmonize the procedure in a part and ensure effective coordination of the management of the flow of goods. We continue to strengthen this aspect in the corridor because we think that currently, if we have less connectivity, it's really important to keep control of the corridor of transit for the goods and to be sure that we can evaluate the services we provide to the different operators on this way.
Well, this is another topic very interesting, of course, that I'm sure Amaury is very well established developing this kind of public-private partnership projects. This is key. No, this is the only way to develop this kind of projects throughout the African continent, right, Amaury?
It's probably the only way, but I would add maybe that a very important thing is to have the development of national operators in each of the countries. It's, in my view, even though I'm not an African, but in my view, it's important that in every big African country, they are able to develop their own operators to be sure that all their ports are not managed by international or foreign operators. So it's I think it could be discussed what's the good level. I don't know, but we can see that, for instance, in Southern Africa, they have Transnet, which is their national operator for the railways and for the ports. Lately, in the last few years, Transnet has been maybe a bit less efficient. Hence, the fact that the government of South Africa has been given the concession of the port, the container port of Durban to a stranger, which is ICTSI. But they have Transnet. In Morocco, once again, they have the Agence Nationale des Ports. They have Marsa Maroc, which is operating the terminal, more than 20 terminals all around Morocco. They have Tangemed also. So they have been able to develop their own institutions and then their own operators in their own country.
Yeah.
So I think that's very important. So yeah, that's the only point I would like to make. PPPs, public-private partnership, it's good. Giving concessions, it's good. But developing your own operators is also a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, on our experience, I mean, me personally, I have been living in Africa for the last 20 years, 6 countries, and I've been having extensive traveling around the continent, and I've seen that as you are mentioning right now, most of the big operators, they are international companies. We see very, very few local operators, with exceptions, as you mentioned, in Morocco, where I'm established right now. South Africa also, and probably in Egypt, which are the three big hubs for transport and for ports infrastructure in the continent. We are seeing all the other regions coming up right now as the West African region, and also East African region with the Port of Mombasa as the main operator. But we are seeing how ports like Lomé in Togo, Abidjan in Ivory Coast, and of course, hopefully, the port also of our friend Michael in Kribi also, it will be growing exponentially in the next years if the infrastructure is developed around the ports, connecting these ports to the other neighboring countries, like in Cameroon is happening with Chad and Central African Republic. So how is the relationship? Because of course now we open another discussion. How is the relation between Cameroon and Chad and Central African Republic in terms of develop this joint infrastructure that will benefit each one of the parties involved? Michael.
So, Chad and Central African Republic, you have to know that with Cameroon, we complete each other we complete each other. So, Chad needs Cameroon, Chad and Central African Republic needs Cameroon to continue to optimize their trade. It's really important. We have bilateral agreements between our countries to be sure that we can develop transit between Cameroon, Chad, and Central African Republic. Currently, to improve this capacity to export and import, this country decide to build a logistic platform near the port. I think that it's not really the good idea because because I think that this kind of solution will multiply the breaking loads. And it's not interesting if you want to reduce the costs of the logistic operations. So I think that we have to collaborate to see how to develop different logistic platform inside these countries and to optimize the management of the corridors between Cameroon, Chad, Cameroon, and Central African Republic to ensure that all the different services can be given to these different countries. This is what I can say about that. But the partnership is good between this country, and I think that the destiny of the region depend of what Cameroon can provide to this country, because Cameroon is the leader economic in the region of Central Africa. We are the first, but we don't have to forget the other countries that we have in front of our borders, like Gabon, like Equatorial Guinea, and like Congo Brazzaville. We have to share our markets. We have to share our market. We have to develop the connectivities between the different economic capitals, and we have to share our skills and to consolidate all the different goods. For example, you have to know that currently all the minerals that the Congo will project in the north of Congo will pass through Kribi ports in the next years, for example. We also have a partnership, an agreement that we want to do with the Gabon to be sure that all the different minerals, manganese, for example, from the north of Gabon, will pass through the Kribi port also. So with the development of the roads between the Equatorial Guinea and Kribi, we also can develop trade between Kribi port and Equatorial Guinea. So we can integrate our economies in Central African Republic and have benefits of these partnerships. Also, the location is Cameroon is very strategic because, as we say before, near from Cameroon, we have Nigeria. We have the east border of the Nigeria, and this is a great opportunities we have to continue to develop our activities and trade with Cameroon, because the Nigeria is the first economy in Africa. Will be the first economy in Africa, I think. This is a continent, as we say sometimes. And I think that we can develop the corridor between these two countries by the pursuit of the construction of the ring road. We call it the ring road. So this is the road between Cameroon and Nigeria, and the railway between the two countries, to have different trade between this country first, and after that to see how to develop our grounds together and provide different goods and services for the different economy in the world. And I will finish with another giant, sleepy giant, as I define it, which is the Congo Republic. You know, with the Ubangi rivers and also with the Congo rivers, we have a great corridor that we can we can manage.
Cutting off a little bit, waiting for
between Cameroon and the Congo Republic. We can operate this corridor between Cameroon and the Republic of Congo to continue to develop strategic trade between African countries and between African countries and the rest of the world. So this is what I can say about this.
Yeah, I mean, you have been talking about something extremely important for the development of the African trade, and is the connectivity between the countries. And this connectivity is going in line with the African Union recently launched free trade agreement that is gonna hopefully foster trade between African countries, benefiting out of the reduction of tariffs in trade between African countries. So we have many things to do in the next future, is developing industries in the different countries. In order to do that, we need access to electricity. We need to develop infrastructure locally and internationally, connecting different countries in Africa. And in order for all our African countries to do this, we need definitely the legal framework in which all of us, we are moving smoothly in all these agreements. Amaury, what kind of challenges you have been facing in all your projects in Africa in terms of this agreement between countries or connectivity between countries? How do you find yourself moving around on these challenges?
Well, it's a very broad question. And once again, Africa is 54 countries. So it's totally different if you speak
in your
about,
experience.
Yeah, in my experience.
Yeah.
So my experience, once again, is of a big change in the last 20 years. You know, I began working in Africa more or less 20 years ago. And I think in the last 20 years, we have seen new infrastructure. We have seen new roads, new airports, and new infrastructure that we did not think would happen. It's true, once again, in Egypt, in Morocco, but it's true also in Ethiopia with the new railway from Djibouti to Addis Abeba. It's true between Mombasa and Nairobi with this new line, this new railway. It's true with the port of Djibouti. So I think, you know, major improvements have been seen in a lot of countries in Africa, but there is a lot more to do because you have this demographic explosion of the population in Africa. You have these countries which are changing very fast. Once again, Kinshasa, it's 20 million inhabitants. Lagos, it's much more than that. So even if you invest, you are always behind this big change these big changes of the demographic explosion of Africa, then you have, and we have briefly spoken about that, but that's very, very important, the urgency of transforming much more raw products in Africa to create the jobs which are needed for the youth, which is coming year after year on the work market in Africa. It's more than 20 million new persons who are coming on the market every year. So you need to create the industry for these people. You need to create the industry to create more value add in Africa. You need this transformation for Africa to be able to trade with itself, because it's very good to have the ZLECAf, but if you only have European, Chinese, Indian products to trade, then it's not a good thing. So that's all the challenges that Africa is facing today. Some countries have tackled the challenge, and some others are a bit late.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, of course, as we were mentioning throughout the discussion today, Africa is a huge continent with 54 countries in which we have different speeds of development. We have countries like Morocco, Egypt, or South Africa that are well above the rest of countries in terms of infrastructure development, ports, as we are mentioning today, for instance. But also we have in Morocco, for instance, high-speed train, something that is almost impossible to think to have all this all over Africa right now, you know. So yes, I mean, we will see hubs developing in the next future in Africa, as we will have the one hopefully for Cameroon, you know, because you are impacting a huge region, as you mentioned, Michael. So I guess we will be developing hubs in different regions in Africa that they will be serving to the rest of the countries in this region. For me, the African Free Trade Agreement is good. Is good in the sense that it's facilitating this trade. But as you mentioned, Amaury, first we need to have local production of goods that we could trade with. So, I mean, we are not here to discuss industrial development in Africa, which is another discussion or another panel to develop in the future. But it's true that we need all these parts of the puzzle to be developed at the same time if we want Africa to develop in the next future, because otherwise these ports, they will be definitely, as we mentioned before, underserved or underexploited, or there will be bottlenecks because we don't have the right connectivity. So we have to develop all the puzzle parties in the same way. Michael, to finalize the discussion, is there any message or any statement that you want to make use of this opportunity to make?
Yes, but with your permission, first of all, I would like to come back to what Amaury said earlier about the development of local operators, if you permit. Okay.
Please, go ahead.
It's true that, as he said, it's really important to note that each country has its own challenge, and priority, and that progress may vary depending on the national context and economic circumstances. So we can do a comparison between Cameroon and Egypt and etc. So it's really important to say that. But if I can speak about Cameroon, to develop local champions, it's necessary to promote access to fundings, but it's also necessary to develop the expertise of the different actors and optimize their professionalizations and make access to the latest generation equipment and materials flexible. This is the first point. And, you know, with the development of the port concession and the concept of landlord ports, the investment we have to do are very high. And unfortunately, the local operators tend to preserve their own interests and find it difficult to pull their efforts in order to take control of the business. So it is therefore necessary to have a strong political will to allow the emergence of local champions. We had the experience before to give the concession of the multipurpose terminal to ICTSI because we decide to continue to work with Cameroon consortium at Kribi Port, but we saw the difficulties they have to work together because they want to preserve the interest they have on the ending of the goods at Douala Port. And Douala Port is not the same context of Kribi Port because Douala Port is not concessions. So all the different operators provide the different services to the vessels and to the different clients they have. So it's really different. So I think that we have to work on this. It's true. We have to have local champions, and it's really important to continue to persist on this way. After that, what I can say about as a final word, I think that currently is necessary to the different European companies to try to continue to have market shares in Africa. But if they want to have market share in Africa, it's really important to know that the strategy that we have, and I can speak in particular about the different countries of the Gulf of Guinea, is to develop the ground by the processing of the raw materials and to develop industries near the port, the seaport that we have. This is why we all decide to build new infrastructure, to modernize the infrastructure that we have. And this is why, for example, in Cameroon, we decide to invest massively in the energy to be sure that we can provide energy for the future industries. So it's really important to know what the benefit we can have in the different part of our territories and to be sure that we can have win-win agreement together with the development of the infrastructures and the industries on the ground in Africa and to have goods of good qualities with less costs for the European economies. But we can't finish this discussion without speaking about all the different best practices and the sustainable practices we can have for the development of the port. It's really important to continue to develop the reduction of the different emissions. I think we have to have sustainable practices, reducing pollution emissions, develop with a gradual implementation of clean fuel distribution for the vessels, for the terminals, for the concession holders. We have to implement waste and wastewater management system to minimize the environmental impact of the port. We have to do many things. So it's a great playground we have currently in Africa in the port activities in general. So I think we can have many ways to develop business together and invest on the right way.
Thank you very much indeed for your insights and your contribution to this discussion, Michael. Amaury, your final words for the discussion?
No, I think we should open the floor to our friends who probably have some questions. Just before we do that, I think there are two ways to look at things. It's to see the glass half empty or half full. And for the port and maritime sector in Africa, in many countries, I think it's half full. It means that big efforts have been made. There is a tremendous modernization that has been done in the last 20 years. And I think that's a very good news.
I totally agree with you. I mean, I'm in love with Africa. I've been living in Africa for half of my life, and I'm seeing the changes. As you mentioned before, Amaury, it is still a lot to be done, but we are going in the right direction. I'm positive about that. With the contribution of of each one of the public institutions, the big companies from outside or from inside Africa, also financing tools, multilateral organizations, and I think we could continue growing as we are doing, and even better for the future. We are seeing in the chat one of the questions they is saying, Amin Alawi saying, what potential challenges might the Atlantic Africa Initiative face in terms of developing port infrastructure along the African coast? Who is answering this question? Please,
As you
Michael.
want. Okay. I think that the different challenge, sorry, I think that the Atlantic Africa Initiative aimed at developing port infrastructure, along the African coast may face several challenges. We have the challenges of the funding constraints, because currently for some African countries like Cameroon, for example, it's really complicated to find fundings. So we're trying to develop PPP to have more efficiency on the follow-up and the evaluation of the different projects we make, and to be sure that we can have funding more easily. The second challenge is the political stabilities. We can see that in the current years and months, we are looking for a lot of changes in African countries regarding the politics. This can be the case for Cameroon in the next years, because we have a presidential election in 2025. So it's really important when we want to continue to develop investments and to attract investors, to be sure that we can have a political stabilities. I think also that it's important to have regulatory framework across different African countries, to be sure that we can simplify the different procedures that we have in the port with the customs, and to harmonize the regulation and the streamlining for the different approval. Also, is really important, I think, to have environment concern, as I said before, and the security challenge that we have to work on, to be sure that we can develop trade in the Gulf of Guinea, because I can speak about the Gulf of Guinea for the African countries. For the other part of Africa, it's really complicated for me to speak about this now, because it's not the same context. And finally, also, I think it's really important to improve the competition and the cooperation between the ports, because I think that the development of the integrated transport corridors can promote the regional trade facilitation in the part, and the competitiveness of the port also. And finally, we have to work on the corruption and the governance issue that we can have in our ports. Ports are really political places in Africa, because this is the main, because ports are the main actor of our economies, because we have some different problem of connectivity inside the territory currently, as Amaury explained it before. This is why we have very more complication to have some trade between African countries. So before we finalize the development of this corridor, it's really important to have efficient ports with autonomous and with a real strategy to develop and attract the business without the governance issue we can have in our country. So the collaboration and the partnership between the government administration agency, the private partners, and the port authority will permit us to continue to develop this aspect.
Thank you very much, Michael. I think, you were very clear that we still have a long way to go, but we are on the right direction, right? We don't have more questions in the chat right now. I don't know if anybody else want to make use of the opportunity to ask. Younes from Younes is telling us, what factors do you think are necessary for the success of the African Free Trade Agreement? Amaury, please.
So that's a very vast question.
It is.
There is, this all these political questions, but I don't think we will go into that because we are speaking here about logistics and the maritime sector. So I'll stay to that. So I think we spoke about that before. First, there is this need to have the infrastructure, the ports, but also the hinterland infrastructure, like the corridors, which are functional. So Michael spoke about Kribi. Kribi is nothing if Kribi is not linked to the rest of Cameroon, to Douala, to Yaoundé, and to the corridor to Chad and the Central African Republic. That's why Kribi was created. It's to innerve also the rest of the country and the rest of the sub-region. Kribi also could be linked to the mines which are developed in adjacent countries of Cameroon. So that's important to have all this infrastructure. It's also important, and I mentioned that before, that you have something that you can trade. Because if you have a trading zone, but you don't have any products that you have manufactured and that you can export, then it's a problem. So I think having these port infrastructures close to special economic zones or to industrial zones in which you produce these things that you can trade is important. They have done that in Ethiopia by developing the textile industry in special economic zones. They have developed that in the close to the Suez Canal, where you have these industrial zones. They have created huge zones close to Tanger, where they produce cars, they produce products in the aerospace sector, etc., etc.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I mean, we are in the right path. The free trade agreement definitely is putting in place a framework to regulate intra-trade in Africa, which is something very needed. The infrastructure should be developed in line and in parallel to this free trade agreement legal framework, and pushing from all the sides, from the ports authorities, railway authorities, from the, as you mentioned, landlocked ports for the countries that they don't have access to the sea, and agreements between the countries to facilitate this intermodal trade. All this is needed in the next future for the development of the trade in Africa. Okay. I think we have covered most of the topics. It's true that we could be discussing more in depth these topics forever, but I think we have covered widely the topics of the discussion. Thank you very much, Amaury. Thank you very much, Michael. I'm very glad to have you here today. Thank you for your wise opinions and discussions. And yes, I pass the word to Shaima to close the webinar.
Hi. Thank you, David. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Amaury. Thank you for this. It was really an interesting debate. I also would like to thank our participants who just a minute, I will mute. I think I have to. 1 minute. Perfect. So I was saying, well, thank you for this interesting discussion. I just wanted to remind you one more time before I go that the second edition of the Africa-Spain Business Summit will take place in Barcelona on the 9th, 10th, and 11th of July. And also, if you're interested in more ports and maritime topics, you can also find us in the Africa Ports Forum that will take place in Cotonou on the 28th, 29th, and 13th of May. So that's it for me. Thank you so much, guys. And hopefully we see you in our other web conferences.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
See you
Bye.
soon. Take care.
Very
Thank you.
much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.